Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. By age 3, 85% of the brain is fully formed. That is an opportune time for parents to stimulate a love of learning in general and certainly the capacity for reading. Yet, according to Prosperity for All, only 35% of public school students in the U.S. are proficient readers in grade 4. Reading is fundamental reports that 34% of children entering kindergarten lack the basic skills needed to learn how to read. I was curious how literacy trends had changed in the last 50 years, for example. Brookings Institution reports that there have been no literacy gains for 17-year-olds since 1971, when the National Assessment of Educational Progress began. So what are the implications for those students as they reach adulthood? Now, anecdotally, I'm sure you're saying, I like to read, or I'm in a book club. People I know read. So how serious can this be? Well, actually, this is concerning for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to talk about this with today's guest and what educators and policy experts like her are doing to help mitigate this problem and what parents can do at home. So meet Maya Payne-Smart. She is a parent educator, literacy advocate, and the author of Reading for Our Lives, a literacy action plan from birth to 6. Her website, Maya Smart, publishes new book lists, literacy activities, and other free family resources weekly to help parents play their dual roles as first teachers and educational advocates. She holds a master's degree in journalism from the Medill School at Northwestern University and a bachelor's in social studies with honors from Harvard University. She serves as affiliated faculty in education policy and leadership in the College of Education at Marquette University. So welcome, Maya Smart.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it as well, because this is a very important topic. So, as I talked about, there is a reading crisis in this country. So let's talk about what that means for us as a country if certainly our young children are not developing strong reading skills, and they're just growing up to not be strong readers, either for work or even for enjoyment.
It's an incredibly serious and widespread challenge that has implications for everything from our economy to national security. When you really dig into it, what does it mean to have 2/3 of kids graduating without being strong readers? It's really devastating for not only their educational prospects, but for their job prospects, their ability to support their families and understand legislation to vote on in elections and navigate contracts, apartment leases, mortgages, and all the many legal documents that come our way in life. So it's a really critical problem. And as you mentioned, those of us who are skilled fluent readers don't realize just that there are tens and tens of millions of other Americans who don't have those skills and really struggle as a result of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, has there been a dramatic shift in skills and habits? And I'm thinking I picked like 1999. That's when my children were born, or 2000. And that's when electronics and really kids media, to me, really just blew up. I mean, of course, Sesame Street's been around for years, and Mr. Rogers, all that, but really just an explosion of all these different programs on TV. And then there was, even back then, there was a lot of videotaping and stuff like that that children used to watch. And so I'm wondering, like, have you seen, or are you aware of what studies are saying about children in that time frame and forward, like what we're seeing about their reading habits, their reading skills?
There definitely has been a lot of research indicating that kids' motivation to read and interest in reading has declined relative to previous generations. And some of that, to your point, is due to technology. Now people can tune into movies or TV on tablets, games, and other apps and things are definitely a distraction from reading books as they might have, 20 or 30 years ago. But the
Hmm.
reality is that reading achievement scores and reading achievement disparities in this country have been bad for decades, even preceding sort of the rise of technology. And so I think the way technology factors in now is that parents also are distracted. Parents are on their phones and on devices more. And I think that's having a negative impact in how much language nutrition we provide our kids, how much attention we're paying, how many back and forth conversational exchanges we have. So I think we'll continue to see the impact of technology in coming years, and it's not only what kids are doing on media, but what parents are doing with it as well.
And I like that term that you used, language nutrition, because it is that vital. Like, when we have children, we bring our babies home. I mean, it's important for us to be talking to them. They don't necessarily understand it. They obviously don't understand what it means, but they're learning so much about communication and becoming accustomed to hearing words and all of that. And then pretty soon they'll want to imitate that, but they learn about speech patterns, how conversations go. This person speaks and then is quiet, and then that person speaks, and all of that. And so it's so important. And it is a nutrient,
It is.
just the way you said.
And parents forget that it doesn't happen all in one day. A child doesn't go from not understanding a word you say to suddenly understanding everything and responding. It really is just this duet of conversation over time, even when they're cooing and babbling and making other noises that aren't words necessarily, but it's all communication and that
Hmm.
dance of responsiveness and paying attention to their eye gaze and gestures and all of those things are so important.
Hmm. Hmm. And I
And
would also
language
say
contributes to
too,
literacy.
say that again, I'm sorry.
And language directly contributes to literacy. All of those words that they hear from caregivers and older siblings and people in their environment, those are the first words that will make sense to them when they read them in print. They're not going to sound out a word, not know what it means, or have any context for it and be able to read well.
Yes, that makes sense. And then also, even having children touch books and play with books, and even young children, even before they know how to read. Because I can remember with my sons, well, we definitely had a lot of books, and one son in particular just really liked to have books, and he just have them in his hand, before he could read. And he actually became an early reader, started reading his first word, understanding his first words at like 2.5. But I remember no, figuring out how he knew his numbers, because he had a little book, and it happened to be a numbers book that would show you one object, two objects, three objects, whatever. But I just kind of experimented with him, and I was like, well, where's five? And then I started noticing he knew, like, based on where he was, he'd go left, or or show me eight. And then he'd go in the other direction and find it. So then that told me that he understood how books work, and the whole left to right, and not only that, but he knew his numbers. But it's just that is really important for them to become comfortable with books, especially now with these phones and tablets and all of that. It's really great for kids to just be comfortable with the object of books, I would think.
Absolutely. And if you think about giving a phone to a baby, it's just such a flat experience for them. They don't get to chew on it and turn the pages and explore and throw it and all the things that little ones do with those
Hmm.
board books. And parents forget that touching the book, turning the pages, all those motor skills are an important part of learning and development too. And so a board book, as simple as it is, just that thick cardboard, really for a baby is a really rich experience. There are 100 lessons in any little book.
Hmm. Absolutely. We'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411. And so I want to shift to that, early childhood and kind of those pre-literacy milestones, because as you said, they don't just show up in kindergarten and now I know my ABCs and start reading. There's some other things that need to happen first. And I think that some parents would be surprised to learn, like what we said about the benefits of just a little kid, 1-year-old say they should have books and even before that, but they should have books, and they might be surprised to know that those little activities that seem meaningless could really set the stage for their children to be good readers. So what are some activities that parents could do with babies that could just kind of start that off?
Definitely just conversation is always a wonderful place to start, and just kind of really settling in and being in a responsive mode and tuning in to wherever they're looking,
Mhm.
whatever they're gesturing at, all of those little things, and just building that habit of responding to it, and also providing some words to
Right.
it. You see them like, "Oh, yes, there's the yellow banana,"
Hmm.
or,
Hmm.
whatever it is, because as we mentioned earlier, all those words are important nutrition for brain development and for,
Hmm.
things to recognize in print. Peekaboo, all those little things, anything you're doing that captures that child's attention
Hmm.
and gives them your love, your care, your words is really valuable. I always encourage parents to take a look at the CDC developmental milestones, and there are other sets of developmental milestones, just to have a general idea of what kids can do and say and how they move at different ages and stages. It's so eye-opening because sometimes you forget how much growth and development happens in just the span of a few months.
Right, right. Those are definitely useful because I think, like you said, parents will be surprised that their child could potentially do some things that they hadn't realized. Now, how about toddlers? What are some things they could be doing?
So with the babies and toddlers, definitely emphasize that back and forth talk, give toddlers even more words, give them, talk about colors and textures and shapes and all the things in their environment. Read also when you're reading books, that gives them an introduction to words beyond your immediate environment and the things you might say naturally in conversation with them. And then as they
Hmm.
get a little older and maybe 3 and they seem to be interested in print, then I encourage parents to make letters a topic of conversation. Start talking about the shapes of
Hmm.
letters, the sounds they make, and their names. And it doesn't have to always be in a book. It could be on a graphic T-shirt or a cereal box, or even just writing a letter on a piece of paper and describing those lines, dots, and curves. Because we forget that they have to learn to distinguish between letters and numbers, or letters and other shapes on a piece of paper.
And the activities that you're describing, they're not intimidating. It's not a whole lot of preparation. I mean, because when you think about it, letters are they're everywhere. Like you said, you could be at the grocery store and someone has on an interesting T-shirt. You could talk, you can talk about that. And they're seeing print all over the cereal boxes and just everywhere. I mean, and hopefully you have magazines at home, and start letting them know that there's meaning, there's real utility in the words that they're seeing. Like you talked about, say there's a yellow banana. Well, they might have bananas in their homes, and it's like, hey, if I learn that word, I can get a banana. I can tell, I can tell mom or dad, I want a banana, because now I know the word for that thing. Before it was just sitting up there on the counter and I didn't know how to ask for it. So That's another thing. So it doesn't have to be. It's not all workbooks and all of that. Especially early on, you can really make it fun. With some of the activities that you described there. So once children get to school, what should they be looking for in terms of the curriculum, and to ensure that their children are getting a good foundation in literacy?
I think in those preschool years, I would spend a lot of time when you step into those preschools, and if you have a choice and you're considering multiple locations, parents are often drawn to, how safe does it look? How clean is it? And all of those things are incredibly important. I would also listen for what kind of conversations are happening in the classroom and how many one-on-one kind of exchanges teachers are having with the kids in the classroom. Because even in any given classroom, some kids are getting more conversation, they're getting more words, they're getting more responsiveness and interactions from the teachers. So I
Mm-hmm.
would listen for how the people in the space are interacting with children. Are they using real words? Are they doing all the things that we talked about parents should be doing? And
Mm-hmm.
then as they get older into formal reading instruction, I would ask questions about how do you teach reading here? And I
Mm-hmm.
would hear some indication that they have an element of systematic explicit phonics instruction so that they're actually teaching kids those matches between letters and combinations of letters and
Mm-hmm.
sounds. And
Mm-hmm.
also you want them to have rich classroom libraries and school libraries if there is one, and exposure to literature that has images of kids that look like them. So you want diversity and all of those things and wonderful stories, but you also want a high level of conversation and
Mm-hmm.
explicit reading instruction.
Yes, yes. So and I'm not sure people always think about the conversation and the engagement going on. They are very much looking for, technology and all of these bells and whistles, which can certainly help, but there are some fundamentals that need to be there. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Anything that parents should be thinking about, like, as children are getting a little older, like maybe even middle school.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that those foundational reading skills are as solid as they can be in the early elementary school
Mhm.
years. You'll often hear that K through 3 are the learning to read years, and then after 4th grade, you're reading to learn. And it's so true that you need a strong foundation in reading in order to navigate word problems in math class or to read the instructions for the in the science textbook or for the science experiment. So you definitely need reading, but you also want the interest in reading, motivation, and you'd like to see some signs that there's something your child wants to read outside of what's assigned to them.
Mhm.
So I encourage parents to be open-minded about what their kids are reading. If they want to read technical manuals for some technology that they're into, it's still reading. If they want to read magazines, still reading. If they want to read online reviews, it's still reading. So don't just look for signs that they want to read literature and, read the things you read when you were. It's a different world, so let them read what they read. But you
Good
do want
point.
signs that they're interested in reading of some kind because it's so important that they keep their reps up so
Yes,
that
because it really is a muscle. You really have to strengthen those reading skills because as you get older, it's more complex reading material, and it requires more critical thinking, drawing conclusions, using what you're reading to go apply it somewhere. As you said, reading to learn. So that's important, and just keeping that interest because as you were talking, I was remembering how. Um, my a couple of friends of mine and I would go to the drugstore, and we had books at home and things like that, but there's always new stuff, and so comic books and things like that, and we used to sit down in the store, over in the magazine section, and sit on the floor reading. I mean, sometimes the manager would have to come shoo us out of there, because we're reading all their stuff for free, but I've never seen anything like that. I've never walked into I've never walked into a store and seen kids, engaging like that. I mean, that was something. I mean, we could spend an hour doing that, just sitting there. And then of course at home, we definitely did that. Like in the summer, it was hot, too hot to be outside or whatever. And we'd be in the house curled up reading, just quiet time, just reading, and it was our choice. And so I don't see as much with that, especially as they get older too. They start to read more, especially in high school. And that's something else I want to talk about, where I've heard a lot of parents of teens say that their children don't read for pleasure very much anymore. It's not that they weren't strong readers when they were younger, but they don't do it between the assignments that they have to read. Um, After that, they're on their phones or or whatever. And so, what are your thoughts about that? Like how how the parents and the family could really keep that interest in reading going, because these are our future leaders. We need them reading. I mean, like you mentioned, national security. We hear a lot about all of the voluminous reports that they've got to read, to to make an assessment about what's going on in the world, and our lawmakers. We need readers.
Absolutely. We do. And I think it's a very real concern when we see kids' technology habits, like their attention spans. Even some parents will say, my child won't even watch a movie or a whole TV show. They just want things in like 2-minute videos on some
Hmm.
app, 5-minute YouTube videos, or won't look up instructions for anything, just want to see a video demonstration of everything. So I
Oh
do think we
yes.
have to keep an eye on it and do all that we can. Sometimes we have to put in work in 2 areas. One is helping them find more of what they like. So if they are interested in a particular type of book or a particular author or a particular topic, going out of our way as parents to help them find more of that, whether it's online, or that's one benefit of technology, some great search algorithms and the ability, if you like this, you might also like this kind of recommendations. But also finding ways to make reading social. I think particularly coming out of COVID, there's a lot of isolation and social challenges among kids. So if there are ways to get them engaged in book clubs or other kinds of groups at school that have a reading element or those sorts of things, sometimes kids will read in order to have those conversations about what they've read with other kids who share those interests. So if there's a way to find a social dimension and also just give them more of what they like, that's a good use of a parent's time to try to research.
We'll be right back after this. As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work: Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork. And we're back with the Parenting 411. I like that, making reading social, and more, that's what it's going to have to be. Like, because as I said, when we didn't have all this stuff to look at, all of this social media and all of these electronic devices, parents didn't have to work as hard to make it social. They could focus on, reading at home and all of that. And the children, they had a captive audience, pretty much. And so now they don't. I guess we kind of made reading social, sitting in the drugstore, sitting on the floor reading books, that we were kind of making that social before we knew, before book clubs were a thing. We had started a book club. But now, what are 5 easy things that parents of children in K through 5 could start doing now, and do it every day to cultivate a love of reading, and certainly reading skills in their children?
So I always start with the conversational piece and getting parents to remember that you're prime vocabulary builders for your kids. And so a lot of kids, after they get to the point where they can decode, they can match the sounds to the print that they see on a page. They just need a lot of experience and background knowledge and vocabulary words to make sense of increasingly complex text. So the more you can talk to your kids about, what's going on at work or in the community or in the news, or you can even talk about a TV show or a movie, whatever
Mhm.
the topic is, just go out of your way to make it a back and forth conversation so they have a chance to think and respond and use their words at all different ages. So that
Mhm.
applies whether it's a 6-year old or a 16-year-old. So make conversation a point of emphasis, make sure it's back and forth, make sure you're asking questions, giving them a chance to respond. The book reading is wonderful with babies. It's even more about the parent building the habit of having books in the home and taking the time to get together and read, even if it's just 5 pages or 5 minutes with the little ones. That habit can carry you through several years. And as their attention span and interest grows, 5 minutes may grow to 15 or 20. So that's well worth doing. I also recommend, we talked about making it social. So finding those community touch points to make it more fun, make it more social, show them that other people are reading too. So I remember taking my daughter to a book club at our local independent bookstore.
Mhm.
And so that was an opportunity to read some books we wouldn't have read otherwise, but it was also an opportunity for her to see kids talking about books and to be part of a group where that was the point of emphasis. So the talking, the reading, the connecting. I think parents should intentionally teach certain things. So I think in talking about letter shapes and sounds, you are helping your child get ready for formal classroom
Mhm.
instruction.
Mhm.
I think parents should also set aside some money for books, maybe magazine subscriptions, educational
Mm.
experiences, like take them to a museum instead of an amusement park sometimes. Like intentionally let them see you invested in those things. I think we send kids so many messages without thinking about it, about
True.
what we value. And, I'm a sports mom. My daughter plays several sports.
Mhm.
I mean, those sports are expensive. The equipment, the clubs, the travel, so she, without me saying a word, sees that we value, physical fitness, activity, being parts of teams and all those things. So you have to think as a parent, well, how am I communicating that I value reading and education too?
Mhm. Mhm. And, actually, and them seeing the parents reading as well and not on the phone or, at least reading. I mean, they might be reading a tablet, but reading. There's something else I used to do too was I bring newspaper articles to the table. I also brought obituaries to the table, especially if I read something because I mean I got that was handed down to me from my mother, reading obituaries. But you find people have led some really interesting lives, not just the famous people, but sometimes there's a long write up about people that you just never met or hadn't heard of, and so sometimes I would tell them about that. Certainly, if it were Black people like trailblazers that little known trailblazers that we hadn't heard of, and so I did that as well. So sometimes they would laugh when they saw me coming with that, to the table. But we had really good conversations, and so I just that does concern me. I mean, the statistics certainly scare me, but what I've been seeing anecdotally, a lot of young people are just not reading as much, and they're literally getting their news from Twitter or Facebook. I mean, like that's their only source. And I like for of course I'm going to really sound old fashioned, but I made sure that we subscribe to the newspaper all of these years, and we still our children are gone now, but we subscribe made sure we subscribe to the newspaper, the hard copy, not just the online version. I thought that made a difference as well.
Absolutely. No one had ever mentioned that as a sort of a family reading practice or habit, the obituaries, but
Oh.
you're right. It's a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation about, a life well lived, or just like the historical things an older person may have been through, or the different career contributions, or all of the things that you mentioned. Because we're not just reading to read, we're reading to develop our ideas and to find meaning in our own work and interactions. And so obituaries in a weird way contribute to so many things.
Yeah, you learn about people and
Mm.
you're like, hey, I didn't know that she was part of that. You may know have known a little bit about it, but like, wow, I didn't know she invented that, or she's related to so and so, someone else that so yeah. So where can listeners grab your book and just learn more about what you're doing?
Yes, you can find me online at mayasmart.com. Maya is MAYASMART.com. Every week I publish new book lists and free family resources and ideas just to help you and your little ones get reading more. And those are available at mayasmart.com/resources. And then you can visit mayasmart.com/book for more information specifically about Reading for Our Lives, a literacy action plan from birth to six, which is sort of just a compilation of all the things that I learned from experience, but also through a lot of research and interviewing experts on early childhood development.
Okay. And did you mention social media?
On Instagram, I'm Maya Smarty with a Y. Maya
Okay.
Smart was taken.
Oh.
And then on Twitter, I'm Maya Smart.
Okay, that sounds great. I hope people will take advantage of that. Will follow you on social media and head on over to your website to grab those free resources because reading is fundamental, and we really need to stay on top of that. Handwriting is another lost art. That's another show, but it goes hand in hand with reading to me. I mean, when I was growing up, a lot of time was spent on that. School time in the school day, as well as what we did at home. And so I really would love to see that return because, there's so many benefits, neurological benefits to all of that, to all of those activities. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge here today. And listeners, as usual, thank you for tuning in. Like, share, just subscribe, tell your friends about this episode. And hey, if you want to watch the episode, head on over to the Parenting 411 channel on YouTube. We'd love to have you there. We've got all of our episodes there for you to watch on replay or share with a friend. And follow the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And remember, it is never too late to be the parent you want to be.